Hello and welcome back to the Double Radio Wrestlecast. Rapid turnaround. We've got two shows that happen very close together, and we're managing to do them, Brett.
Just barely.
Just barely. AEW All Out 2024 just happened. This is only a few days after the fact. And we got a lot to talk about. I think that already the news cycle for All Out has been pretty insane. Um, I think we're going to have a lot to say both about the show and about what other people are saying on the show.
Yeah, a
So,
little bit.
first of all, let's get through the pre-show stuff very quickly because these ones weren't that important. They didn't have the situation I think like All In had, where some of them were storyline enders.
Hmm.
Here it was mostly we want to get these people on the stage. So we had Acclaimed beating the Iron Savages, Bronson and Boulder. Uh, in the first match. Second match was trios with Hologram Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes versus the Premier Athletes. You so excited about the Premier Athletes, Brett?
They are one of those factions where I don't really care.
All
They're
right.
not like bad, but they have no hook. Not the guy, but the
That's the
phenomenon.
thing.
They don't have a
That
hook.
that's my thing with it. Whenever we get a Premier Athletes type faction, you've got nothing going on. Like I need a second layer. And speaking of
Yeah.
second layers, the next match was Bang Bang Gang defeating the Dark Order. Both teams got second layers. All right, moving on.
Hmm.
Undisputed Kingdom defeats the Beast Mortos and Shane Taylor Promotions, and Action Andretti and Top Flight. All right, that was our pre-show. Let's move on to the meat and potatoes of the actual show because we've got a lot to go through
The
here.
actual interesting part.
And speaking of actually interesting parts, first match, singles match between MJF and Daniel Garcia. Been building for a little while. And Brett,
Yup.
before we start going through things here, what's your initial take? What was your reaction from this?
With the just the match itself,
Yeah,
or
overall match rating. What's your over under on it?
this was really good. Um, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have many problems with it. I think MJF is just kind of he does the things that MJF does really well, really consistently, and he doesn't
Yep.
really screw them up. The last promo they had before this match um was like the perfect setup. Uh, and
Yeah, we should call out
yeah, I don't
the
know.
pre all out dynamite was exceptionally good. A lot of progress and like very very good promos. Maybe the single best promo I've seen in Hangman's promo against Swerve.
Yeah,
Um,
seriously.
but we'll talk about that later. For the MJF and Garcia, it was great because it established a lot of things that get resolved in this match and some callbacks to it, which is very fun seeing them work that in the way that they did. All right. Other things about MJF and Daniel Garcia here. So we talk a lot about MJF being like a really good workhorse and just an impressive wrestler in general.
Mhm.
Always love seeing him. Daniel Garcia tends to get those same compliments, but often isn't in the title picture. Um, Still being seen as kind of an up and comer, or if you would want to use the pillar terminology, one of the newer pillars. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think this is a really good showcase for both of them. I think Garcia in particular here does a really good job of like seeming to be incredibly beaten up at many points of this match, and do the thing that a lot of AW's roster likes to do, where they then pop back up and keep going. He's also got a very good lariat, which I always appreciate a good lariat.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he's someone I took quite a little bit to kind of get into when he first showed up. But now I think he's just improved so incredibly much. Um, that like him fighting uh basically somebody as larger than life as MJF, because that is kind of what MJF is by this point.
Yeah, larger than
It
life,
doesn't
and
really
also just like
feel.
physically larger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is
That's true
definitely one
too.
of the matches where like MJF is often up against people with very impressive physiques. Garcia is definitely not quite to that bar. So I think you see a little bit of that like David and Goliath theming here.
For sure, yeah. Especially with how like seriously young he is, he's still kind of got the
Mm-hmm.
big head mode going on, such as kind of like buffer younger guys do. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, this was not an out of place feud to happen just because of how they built it up. And Daniel Garcia is so good that AEW kind of giving him these accolades doesn't feel forced. He's
Yeah,
not somebody that like they just say he has these things, and then he comes out and can't back it up. He legitimately does, which yeah, just this match starting is crazy because this is like I feel like AEW has kind of one or two shows per year that are like the absolute brutal crazy shows, and like sometimes we do the whole like, oh, they didn't even need any gimmick matches for this to be good kind of spiel, which is true. But then sometimes they pull the, oh my god, this entire card had people like bleeding or like folding in half or like
mm-hmm.
completely like just doused in their own sweat, and this was the second one for sure, and this is the great kind of match to start that card off because it was no exception. This is a brutal feud that involved people legitimately looking like they were like really injured, like in the back of your head that they're not, because they wouldn't really be able to put it on TV in the way that they did. But yeah, both these guys are super good at selling. Both these guys are super good at having moves that have crazy impact. Um, yeah, I don't know. They're both really skilled, and the fact that they're both, especially Danny Garcia, both super young, is just like insane. The career that they're going to have for
Yeah,
the rest of their in ring life.
for sure. All right, so this is one of the longer matches on the card. Though we did
Yeah,
this match, this card in particular leaned long. There were no actually short matches on the main card. Uh, but I think this went really well. I think the at one point MJF pulls out the walls of Jericho for a moment. It's very funny. Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of really fun stuff in this match. I think in particular the finish to this is great. MJF wins, but
but
good old Danny Garcia, in a ploy of vengeance from his Dynamite moment, inflicts some real damage, and basically mimics the whole thing that MJF did to him at Dynamite. And I think this was a great finish. I think this was really fun. I think it preserved MJF being the sort of like very highly rated uh, character in AEW, but you also get Daniel Garcia getting his moment, which I think is very cool. And I'm wondering if this is the end of this feud because I know MJF, I believe, has stated that he's on a little bit of a vacation after this, or at least something has come down the vine that he is taking. The reason they went so hard with the injury angle is that he's going to take a little bit of time off, which is not surprising after pay-per-views. But yeah, I'm
yeah,
wondering if this is the finish to this, or if there's going to be another match down the line.
yeah. I don't know. I think this could either be like a. It's hard sometimes to see when something is like a normal like short form feud versus a long form feud that's gonna like encapsulate two guys' entire like careers within a company or something. I think this has potential to be a long form one, and maybe they kind of cross paths multiple times, and they
Slow
can
burn,
pull
long form, yeah,
yeah, and they could pull it. Oh, they hate each other from like a year ago kind of angle, but that
totally, totally.
or they could have another match after this. I don't know. There's a lot of people really deeply hating each other, and feuds needing to escalate in violence to display that. So I don't know how many times they can double down on that.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. Well, yeah. Overall thoughts on that match are very positive. I think they both showed up really well. And right afterwards, they start teasing us with the main event again. Because they're
Oh yeah.
showing Swerve and Hangman both in separate locker rooms, surrounded by security guards, and not being allowed to move until their match. Which is like,
Which
it's
is kind
very
of awesome.
silly. It's a very silly wrestling thing, but it's kind of great.
It's
I'm
yeah,
pretty
like
into
oh,
it.
they're so dangerous that they can't even we can't even risk them getting out of their rooms because they might find each other and try to kill each other before the match even happens. Like that's crazy. That is so that is so good.
Yeah.
Um
I love it. Let's move on
yeah.
to Claudio and Wheeler Yuta of the BCC against the EVP Matthew and
Nicholson.
Nicholas Jackson. I have to say their full names contractually
Of
of the
course,
Young
of
Bucks
course.
in a tag team match for the championship. This was, I think, one of the surprisingly less crazy matches because typically when you get Young Bucks and BCC in a thing, it's going to be a little wild. Um,
Yeah,
and I think this was relatively tame compared to some of the matches they've had. For me,
certainly. Yeah.
the measuring bar for a Young Bucks match is always their sort of like trio of matches against the Lucha Bros. Um,
Mhm.
with the zaniness that happened in those, and I think there was a lot less of that here. Uh, Partly just because BCC is a much more grounded faction, but I do think it worked really well. I think they're like styles play off of each other very well here.
Yeah, and I think I said a similar thing about the last show, but I mean, Young Bucks, not like even in like kayfabe, they're not paying me to say this, but they are just they're just genuinely good EVPs, and like even though they are EVPs, they're like okay, well there's some like arguably more important things that people are more excited for later in the card. Let's keep this to like a solid 15 minutes,
Yeah,
and a
totally.
solid 15 minutes it was. This didn't need to be like crazy. The tag belts are the crux of the entire company, and we need to just bring the stadium down with an amazing match. Like, no, it didn't need to be that, but the match was still really good. I think just because of the like they just trimmed the fat with it, and because of that
Yeah,
reason, I think it was better than the three-way scenario from London. Um, and also just because both the teams involved are really, really, really good.
yeah. I
Um,
think the big thing that helps here is that there is not a single person in this match who cannot sell incredibly well. And
Certainly not. Yeah.
that is typically when I think a BCC match doesn't look super impressive. That's the reason is the other person it doesn't do a great job at selling the like hits. Because BCC is very like
Yeah.
punchy. And I think the Bucks do a good job. I also think Claudio does a great job of like taking Bucks moves and looking really good when while doing it.
Yeah,
Um,
he is I mean there's a reason he keeps being put in matches with so many high flyers and smaller guys, and it's not because he's like a bigger buff dude that can like throw them around. It's like him specifically, I don't know, he's just such a good platform for them to do this crazy stuff off of.
yeah, totally.
Because he just makes the high flyer guys look so good, without coming off like a loser. I don't know. He's just like very very unique way that he takes moves, and will appears to work with other guys to kind of have their crazy spinny stuff, um, kind of be pulled off better. And also, like, definitely not the first time we've said this before about Yuta, but the same thing that we just said about Daniel Garcia can definitely be applied to him as well.
Yeah, I think
I
Yuta's
think that was
absolutely like
why,
he has one of the biggest progressions in AEW because people, I don't know, Yuta was okay when he first showed up and he was fun to watch,
yeah,
but he didn't really have a ton going for him. I think especially after some events later in the show that we're going to talk about, Yuta's got
yes,
a arc going on, and it's
for
very
sure,
entertaining. I'm super into it. I think Yuta, like from being in the BCC this long and doing a lot of tag stuff, is now at the point where he can do single stuff incredibly well. there's a couple
Totally, yeah.
sequences here I do want to call out in particular. Of there's a moment where Claudio has got oh my god, I can't remember which one's Matt and which one's Nick. This match, he's got one of the Bucks hanging over the ropes, and Yuta gets in a corner and throws the other one on top of him, and I think it looks amazing. Shit like
Yeah.
that, especially because they didn't do the long awkward pause that tag team matches often do to set up a move like that. It seems like everyone was in the right place at the right time to get that to happen without it seeming like they needed to pause to maneuver. And I think that's really good. He then has some super good holds. He's reminding me a lot of like the Danielson with the technical holds. But in particular, there's one where he like hooks a leg up and around in a way that I think I've only seen Hikaru Shida do before, and it was very
Yeah.
entertaining. Um, yeah, I was very into this match just from a technical perspective. All right, any other thoughts that you want to mention from here?
I guess just on the first specific move you mentioned about Wheeler throwing people that are larger than him is that he really does do that a lot, and it always looks really good.
Well, especially
I
because
think
Yuta's
he
like Yuta's not ripped. Like, he's not
no, yeah,
Claudio.
he has a very lithe build. Even compared to someone like Daniel Garcia, his like he just doesn't I guess display strength in kind of like the stereotypical way that you would expect from a guy. But he's just like he might just be like a master of like physics or something because he does the thing where like he spins out of the ring and like swings back between the ropes and stuff. I think he might just know exactly what like, for lack of a better term, like what the fulcrum is to like do a move off.
Totally. Yeah, I think he looks great when
Impressive.
doing all of these.
Yeah.
All right. So, finish of this match is the Young Bucks retaining their titles, as I think everyone knew going into this. I don't think anyone expected a
Yeah,
title
for
change
sure.
here. Especially being that this was Claudio and Wheeler and not Danielson or something in the second BCC slot. But of course, he's got a match later. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so that's our tag team duo match. Moving on to another, I think this one's just a dream match. I don't think there needed to be a story going into this at all, and I'm kind of glad
No, yeah.
they just went
They just
off.
did it. Yeah.
Which is Pac and Will Ospreay for the
Yeah,
international championship.
this is my match of the night for sure. Which is saying something because like again, this was a very, very stacked card with some real crazy bangers later on as well. But yeah, I don't know. This is like
Like everyone was
I mean it is
excited for Pac and
literally
Ospreay for very good reasons. Um,
yes.
I'm also glad to note he is still using the Assassin's Creed gear even without the whole sponsorship thing showing
Yeah.
up, and I think it looks great. So you know,
Yeah,
keep rocking it.
he's always pulled that off really well. It's I think every time he comes out with the giant ass hood, it looks a little funny because we have real life physics and it's not a video game, and so it does flop around a little bit.
Yep.
But it's still cool. It's still cool. Um, but
um,
multiple times during this match. I'm going to call out a specific move immediately, and I have no idea exactly what it is because I'm not sure that there are like more than one or two people on the planet that can do it like these guys do. But like multiple times they do this thing where like one of them is up on the other's shoulders and is either about to like put them in some sort of like pile driver or like throw or something, and Pack just like wrenches his body and just like a midair 180 and just flips like
and he
without
does
touching the
that
ground at
repeatedly
all.
too. Like he does
Yeah,
it
it's
multiple times in
insane.
sequence throughout the match, and this is one of the ones that reminds me of. I'll always remember. I think one of the first actual non AEW matches that you showed me back when we were in college was Shingo Takagi and Will Ospreay, and they had
Yes,
one
yes, I remember
sequence
that.
in the middle, and I think that this is as close as I have gotten to seeing that again with a
Yeah,
different group of people because Pac and Osprey uh, do such a good job of playing off of each other. And they're both like very counter focused wrestlers, and they both do a great job of showing
mhm,
that off in the middle of the match, and just so smoothly doing it too. Where like a lot of the time when you'll see other people attempt to do a sequence like this, it'll just be like someone will get lost, right? Like there'll be a moment where someone slightly misses a move or they need to adjust, and then they have to go to like a pen attempt or something to break it up. Um, and there's just multiple moments here where it's like a extended 30 to 40-second long sequence that ends with both of them staring at each other.
Yeah, because neither of them miss a beat, and they're both the kind of guy that will like their whole thing is like they do such crazy stuff that it's just supposed to surprise the other guy they're wrestling, but they're both like that. So they just both do like like 30 seconds of crazy gravity defying shit. And I'm like, well, that didn't get either of us. I guess we'll have to try something else now. And they just go all over the ring and outside the ring with that shit. It is absolutely
Yeah, because of
crazy.
course they're both
Um,
high flyers to a degree and do all sorts of insane stuff around the ring too.
yeah.
Um, yeah, no, this match is super impressive. I think this shows a lot of sequences where like I think some people will look at this and go, "Oh, indie wrestling," and be upset for some reason. And
Yeah.
I
Meanwhile,
am
I will
sad at
look at
those
this and
people.
go, "Oh, indie wrestling, yes!" Like
Uh,
two completely different kinds of people.
yeah, and I also have to say, Pac does a thing when he gets hit by certain moves, specifically when he's midair, where he'll like get hit and then do like two flips in a row
Yeah, yeah,
to sell the hit,
yeah.
and it's a thing that is so rare to see and so impressive every time he does it, even though it's like meant to be him getting hurt, but it looks
Yeah, dude,
incredible.
it's like again, it's I don't know. It's wrestling is a two-way street, and you have to be equally as good at looking good yourself as you have to be good at making the other guy look good. I don't know. It's like it makes the match more interesting if you just sell shit like crazy, and it to me, who is an avid respecter of the craft when it comes to literally anything that I know anything
Yeah.
about, that shows to me that you're having a lot of fun because otherwise you wouldn't be doing like just stupid shit like that all the time. I don't know. Um, but yeah, this is another one of those ones. This is one of the ones that Ryan, if we weren't here right now, and I hadn't gotten you back into the wrestling world, this would be the match to show. This is the match to
Oh,
show
totally.
you're on the fence, almost wrestling friends. Because this one also this ain't as long as Will Ospreay's usual like crazy, nearly hour-long New Japan
Yeah.
jaunts
It
against
is
like
a
Kenny
longer
Omega or
Pac
even
match. I
Shingo.
feel like Pac doesn't often go for 20 minutes or longer matches, but he did here.
Yeah,
And this is also I think the one match on the card that most people are gonna love because there was nothing risky in this match, and we'll talk more about that at the end. But a lot of the
mhm,
other matches on this card ended up in having moves that traditionally people see as risky, uh, and I think this is just one of like this is just good classic wrestling that looks insane because
yeah,
they're flying all over the place. Um, and yeah, there's one particular sequence too that I really like where Osprey gets Pac up on his shoulder to try something, and then Pac suddenly pulls out a Rana from nowhere with no
yeah. That's what
momentum.
I was talking about
Yeah,
before. It just like midair flip completely without touching the ground.
and not just a
I
flip, but
don't know where the
he's
momentum
flipping
comes from.
Osprey as well.
Yes,
So
it's a complete full
he
rotation.
does a complete full rotation, and it looks great. And then Osprey hooks him into a Styles clash.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And
okay,
worth pointing out, one of my other friends who was watching this made a really good point. A lot of times when wrestlers are using another wrestler's move, it's like okay, it's like the other guy's a famous wrestler as well, who's well known, or like they gave this person this move somehow, as they sometimes ceremonially do from time to time. So it'll still be like powerful in the power fantasy of wrestling, but it won't be as good as the original guy doing it, right? Will Ospreay makes the Styles Clash look just as powerful as AJ Styles does. And
yeah,
that
it
is
looks great.
something that you usually like never see, which is I think it's pretty cool, especially for somebody who's clearly taking so much inspiration from AJ Styles. It doesn't come off as like a ripoff that he's just doing somebody else's move because it looks cool or anything. It really like that is, and every time he
Yeah.
sets it up too, like everybody goes crazy because they know exactly what's coming, and because he does it so well. And yeah,
And he also he
that's
doesn't do
a
it every
very unique thing to
match,
see.
with
No, he
good
doesn't.
reason, because everyone knows like the Styles Clash is a move that like you cannot protect yourself from
Yeah, yeah.
when it's happening. So you have to both like know that you can take it and know that the other person can do it correctly. Because it's one of
Mhm.
the few wrestling moves where like you cannot rely on anything being there to block you. Uh,
Yeah, it's just gravity, and that's
it's just gravity
it.
and you pulling your head back so you don't slam it into the ground. And I think the trust that takes to do that so well is really cool.
Yeah,
And
for
yeah,
sure.
Osprey takes this match home with a great finish, and I think a pretty universally well liked match.
For sure, yeah.
All right, let's move on to our street fight with Willow
Let's
Nightingale
go.
and Chris Statlander, accompanied by Stokely Hathaway.
Dude, I said there were bangers later in the card. There's one right now. They were
Hell yeah!
crazy for putting this one right after Will
Well, this was
versus
really
Beck.
the 1-2 punch.
Yeah, for sure.
To be
This
fair, we
is
have
like
another
I
1-2 punch coming up as well.
Yeah, they almost don't stop for basically the rest of the card, which is why it is crazy to me that I said before we started that it almost feels like the show didn't happen just because of how close it was to all in. Because all the matches are for the most part like completely they're either good or really 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 good. There's not a single bad match on this card. I don't think. Maybe we'll have
Yeah.
some differing opinions, but somehow I doubt it. Well, this I don't. This is a feud again that they could keep going really for
And I'll also
a
say
long time
I
with.
I have been one of the longest holdouts of not necessarily liking this direction for Statlander. Mostly because I was too attached to her old character.
For yeah, and it's hard to let go of the alien. It really
I think it's
is.
because it's such a big change. Like it's going
Yeah.
from a completely goofy. It's like if Orange Cassidy suddenly started calling himself his real name and turning around and dropping
Hmm.
every gimmick. It would feel weird. But I do think this is where it's paying off. I think Statlander here is like she has now moved past the whole alien thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're like, and she and Stokely have by now nailed the whole like balance of serious and silly thing. They've established themselves so well by now. Especially the every day is or every night is Saturday night. Like that's so good. I don't know that
Yeah,
that is so good. It's so stupid. Stokely coming out looking like I don't know like a like an indie anime character really is like is what it makes me think of with the chair that says Rip New Jack on it.
yep.
And then like also the fact that there's something to be said for just how brutal the women's street fights are in AEW, and I feel like they don't get enough appreciation because it's not like they don't really.
Yeah, this
It's not like
reminds me
they
a
don't
lot of
happen often.
ages ago. It was the what was it? The Bunny and Penelope Ford
Yes,
had an
yes,
insane
yes.
street fight that then never got talked about again.
I know. Yeah, that happened. And the one that did get talked about a bunch was Britt and Thunder Rosa, but
Yeah,
like you got like three crazy good street fights, which are, but with a bunch of other like really good ones in
maybe the
between, to
best
the
Brit
point where
match.
yeah. Well, I'll have more to say about that later when we do our wrap up of the show, I guess. But like I don't know. I feel like I could be wrong because I don't have any statistics in front of me. I feel like there might be more women's street fights or street fight equivalent matches because I know sometimes they name them.
Yeah. Um, I think they did a great job here. I also think before we even get to like the street fighty parts of this match, Willow does a great job of making shoving someone
Is
look dangerous. Because I don't think I've ever
yeah, yeah.
seen another wrestler, aside from maybe Nyla Rose, make that look good, and like Eddie Kingston. It's a very rare thing that you can just like push somebody and it looks threatening.
Yeah, yeah.
But she opens the match by doing that, and it looks great. And Stat goes flying, and I think it's great when they do that. There's also I'm a classic fan of the announcers table. You know, throw them into the announcers table. Everyone loves that. I don't think I've ever seen it break so spectacularly.
Yeah, yeah, because there was a period where they did it like every other episode of everything for like a couple weeks, and it was pretty
Yeah.
funny. But they kind of stopped for the last little bit, and it happening again,
It's also
and to
typically if
the
someone gets thrown into the
insanity.
announcers table now, it's a table that bounces them. They don't break the table. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and Stat throwing Willow into the table and then the table just completely collapsing, I think is both very funny and looked great.
yeah.
um,
Seriously,
yeah, and they pull out all the stuff that you would expect from a street fight here, and really end up going all over the ring, which is something I love to see.
yeah.
That and seeing Willow Nightingale hit somebody with light tubes, not something that I had in my expectations for this.
Pretty fucking awesome.
Looked pretty great.
The last person to do that in AEW was Nick Gage forever ago, and it made people mad for some reason. But I do it do it again every so often. It's an amazing spot. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a great spot as long as they just are intelligent about when to use it, so it doesn't look extremely dangerous.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
because yeah, that's the one classic thing of like I have a feeling they're using a different type of thing here and not the same light tubes that the indie death
yeah. I
matches
don't think
often
they're
use.
yes, they're probably safe ones, which is fine, but they have the same effect.
Oh, they look
So
great. Yeah,
yeah, they it's the same difference to me basically. They look just as brutal.
yeah. I think it's just they're not meant to cut you the same way that like indies use ones that are meant to leave cuts.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
over where they hit. I don't think that was the case here. I also think there's a couple of great moments here that there is one match. I can't remember the second person. I think it was Asuka actually in NXT. One of the final matches of I believe this was Asuka and Nikki Cross. Was a like crazy street fight style thing. I think it was the no holds barred was the technical thing. Um, in like the final bit of the NXT Great Era before the color bombs dropped, and this is the closest I think I've seen to that as well. Especially like some of the spots are almost straight out of it, where there's moments Statlander like spears Willow off of the side of the ramp, and through a table
Yeah,
set up on
yeah,
the
yeah.
side, which it comes off great. It looks really really well done. Great visual.
Yeah, this is by now like I don't think there's really much question about it. These are two of the best in the women's division, just in the AEW probably. And I don't think
And yeah, there's a
AEW really
reason
has
Stat and
many
Willow keep getting
problems.
matches, as the
Yeah,
two of them are
seriously.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I also think this is the thing that always gets me is like the stuff that gets me in street fights is the tax. When I see tax come out, I get
Yeah.
nervous, and when I see someone do a split into tax,
Right into the tax. Yeah.
I get real nervous. not
Yeah, that
not
is
because
that
it
is a crazy spot to agree to.
yeah, wild, and then to get flipped into them again. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, the tags are like, especially because I know they're relatively safe. Um, it's just one of the ones that I don't know, not a fan of that. In
No,
terms of, not
no.
in terms of, I don't think they should have done it because I think it looked great, but in terms of that would be the thing I don't want to happen to me.
Yeah,
Um,
seriously.
yeah, I think they did a great job with these, and Willow being part of a street fight, I think worked really well. That said, Willow didn't win.
No, she did not.
This was
Which
Stat.
tells me that this still isn't the end, which is fine because, like I said, they can keep going.
Yeah, Stat starts to choke her out with a chain, and you know, I would submit too. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think I want that to keep happening. All right, great match. Do we want to move on to our next one? Do you have other thoughts?
No, that's definitely as much as I have to say, probably.
Okay. Next up, we have the four-way match for the AEW Continental Championship, with Kazuchika Okada defending against Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Konosuke Takeshita.
Which what a lineup! What an absolutely crazy lineup that all
This
these
is a
people are working for the
stacked,
same
yeah.
company.
I think like four-way matches are always weird to me because they get a little chaotic.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think this is the right group of people to control that chaos in some
hmm
manner. Um, and I think it's working out well,
I
especially
feel like it's
because.
because
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I feel like it's because they're all relatively they're all relatively grounded. Nobody's trying to do
Yeah, we do see the occasional crazy stuff out of good old Briscoe and Konosuke, but typically
across the
nothing
ring and
too.
breaking their ankle.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, you just kind of have like a lot of grounded guys that look good, kind of doing their usual spots where nobody is really in danger of doing anything that's hard to keep track of.
yeah. Especially the thing that always gets me in four ways with high flyers is the we're all gonna stand in a triangle and then catch someone.
Yeah, yeah,
Because it almost never looks good. uh,
yeah.
and thankfully, I think this match gets away from a lot of that because of they're so focused on the in ring stuff happening. There's not a ton that happens outside in this match. Uh, in particular, I do really love. I think Orange Cassidy had a good showing here.
For sure.
Love to see him coming back when he does. And especially against someone like Konosuke Takeshita, who moves so quickly. I think it really shows off his
Yeah.
speed in a way that he doesn't often get to do, unless he's in like one of the crazy matches with Pac or something. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I again Okada as well. Getting to see him in some of these like I don't know. I don't know if it's fair to call Okada and Konosuke Takeshita a dream match, but it kind of is. And I want to
I was gonna
see.
say, yeah, I hope they get a singles match after this
I really want them to
because
have a
it's gonna be
singles
really good.
match. All right. Well, anything else you want to call out in this match? Because I think this is relatively simple overall. Uh, this was Okada's big defense, basically.
It's yeah, this functioned as like cementing him as like, okay, yeah, he does in fact deserve to have this belt for sure. It is what I took it as because that's the effect that it had on me. Like I obviously know that Okada is a talented individual who has it in him to have a championship to the point where he kind of works way better with a belt than he does without one. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was the point of this match, I feel like.
Yeah, totally. Especially with how much they
And
were playing up like this being an unfair thing for him to have to defend against. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but I think it worked really well.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on the four-way match?
Nope.
Great. And we're moving on to the next one, but I do just want to give a special shout out to Mark Briscoe and Orange Cassidy high fiving in the middle of the match. With
Oh,
that,
of
we'll move
course, because
on.
they're part of the conglomeration.
Yeah, they're part of the conglomeration. They high five in the middle of the match. Uh, next is Hikaru Shida and Mercedes Monet.
This is another one. I'm just gonna say right now, another of the ones that was just like solid. Not a bad match per se, but I feel like I wasn't really like wowed by anything crazy that
Yeah,
happened. But it was
I
just really
think
good.
I think
It
this
hit
was good.
expectations. That was it.
I do think my expectations were too high.
Okay.
I don't think that's the fault of anything in particular, but I think that I have a reputation in my head of what Hikaru Shida does because of how
Yes.
yeah, I think it's entirely because of the one match against Serena Deeb that was maybe one of the most insane like grounded wrestling matches I've ever seen.
For
Where the
sure.
two of them are just like constant holds and transitioning and whatnot. It looks great. Uh, and this was less of that. This was not like a. This was a little bit more like spotty, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
That said,
Which I feel like
I am glad Hikaru Shida has embraced the Yakuza gimmick.
Yes, yeah, I was waiting for you to say it because I know finally
And at
your day
one
is
point,
come.
someone does hold up a like a dragon sign that says "Holy
Yeah,
Sheeta" on it.
yeah, and it's so good.
Yep, I
And
love
I
it so
think
much.
even Excalibur calls out the name of the protagonist from the newer ones, even for
Yeah, it's because it's
one of the
Ichiban's.
outfits she's wearing.
It's Ichiban's like sign, and then she's wearing
Yes, yeah,
gear
yeah, yeah.
inspired by it. Um, yeah. Yeah, again, always love Hikaru's gear because I think she's one of the. If I remember correctly, she's one of the wrestlers who makes her own gear generally,
Yes, she is.
and it looks amazing. Uh, and yeah, both Mercedes and Sheeta are phenomenal wrestlers. I think something about their styles just didn't quite like push them above anything.
Would you say that
If
their styles clashed?
Yeah, I would say their AJ styles clashed.
Okay.
Um, which yeah, I don't know.
Awesome.
I think a little bit of it is Mercedes to me has not had the breakout match
Yeah,
in
not yet.
AEW yet. I think Mercedes needs like a high profile, impressive match, and it really
Yeah.
like hasn't happened yet. And maybe it's that she needs more of a feud. And this is one of the ones where I do think like a little bit more behind the actual feud here would have been beneficial.
Yeah, this is a I this very much feels like a we just need a match to have at the next pay-per-view. Oh, it's in 2 weeks. Okay. Who do we have that's really good right now? Sheeta. All right, I guess you can fight her. Because yeah, it's the let's just say the last match left a little bit to be desired, and they had nothing to go with from that conclusion.
Yeah. But I do think this was much better. And I think both Sheeta and Mercedes looked great in this match.
Yeah. Again, it's like it is weird to say, and it kind of feels like we're like extra dressing it in compliments to make it feel better because it wasn't really that good. But it is just like this match is like seated in between just like matches of such high quality that
Yeah, I would say honestly
it's
the four-way match before it has the same issue.
yeah, because it's not the crazy street fight or Pac versus Osprey, and it's not either of the two matches that come after this. So that like this, and honestly, it couldn't be because I think if it was, people literally like I don't know, I can't like somewhere in this like 4 hour period, I gotta go to the bathroom, man. I don't know, and I can't miss anything. I have to at some point. I'm a human being. Everybody does. And just for the entire pay per view to be absolute insane shit that I don't want to miss. Well, that's just not nice to do to people. So having some perfectly like great mixed in with your absolutely incredible is okay. It's
Yeah, it's
fine.
fine. You need the peaks and valleys, and unfortunately,
It's true.
this match, despite being a
Yeah,
great match, is one of the valleys of the pay per view.
which is
Um,
crazy to say.
yeah. Uh, all right, this is obviously Mercedes going to win this match. As much as I love Sheeta
Yeah.
and think she should have won, even if I have no valid reason for thinking that. Look, I just want more belts on Sheeta. All right.
I know, I know. It'll happen. It'll happen. You know it's going
Yeah.
to.
When are we getting belt collector Sheeta?
Please.
Overall, great match though. Okay, let's move on to one of the two big ones.
Oh yeah.
So our official main event of the night is Jack Perry versus Bryan Danielson for the World Championship. Of course, this starts with a long sequence of Jack Perry arriving and then accompanied by Matthew and Nicholas uh,
Yes.
on the way to the ring, as well as Danielson coming out in as grand of a final countdown fashion as possible.
Which their deal with their deal to get the final countdown played more often is crazy because I think they might be the first anything to be able to do that.
Yeah,
Uh, the fan hates that song so much, but I am glad that he can use it at least for pay per views while he's
yeah.
on his last ride, I suppose. Um, but we talked last time a lot about how well Jack Perry, who I will just reflexively keep calling Jungle Boy from time to time
Yeah,
because that's
occasionally
just
it's gonna
not
happen.
gonna. It's yeah. He
Little Jurassic Express
cemented
never hurt
himself.
anybody.
Oh, of course, of course. He's cemented himself so well by now that yeah, I don't want to harp on that too much because we did talk about that last time, but this continues the trend of him just finally, certainly 100%. He's caught his groove,
Yeah,
and
it.
it
The
hasn't
reason I
been.
do want to stick on this for a second because I actually one of the more common complaints I've seen from the show is that Jack Perry doesn't have like a super strong gimmick, which I just disagree with. I
Yeah,
think that's
that's
just coming from a
yeah,
perspective of like not paying attention to what's happening.
yeah,
Because yeah, I saw a lot of people like disappointed that he's with the EVPs and all that in this like storyline and whatnot, and I think it's all working very well for me. I do think this
yeah.
is
Same.
yeah, like there's moments where like he will stand on the ring when entering it and do like the smiled like smug satisfied face as the audience is like booing and cheering at once.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think he's like really nailed in on a like stage presence, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
Which to me is often the thing that like pushes wrestlers over the edge. It's the same reason I like the House of Black so much is because of their whole the presence that they have on the stage even before the match begins is huge. And I think that's also one of the things that WWE often does really well is they're great at giving
Yeah.
their people stage presence. And when someone in AEW gets like the larger than life presence that both Bryan Danielson and Jack Perry have, I think they stand out quite a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think
It
this is
pays
a
off
great
really well.
match. I think this is a great pairing, especially. I think the two of them played off of each other super well.
Yeah, this I definitely agree with you that if you are one of the people that somehow doesn't think this works, I don't know what would have for you because by this point, Jack Perry's been built up so well, and yeah, I don't know. He isn't. I guess he isn't somebody with the craziest wrestling style, but I feel like in ring he's super reliable, and that's exactly the kind of person that you want against
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a
Bryan
lot of
Danielson.
MJF. Like MJF does not have, I think, a super unique style, but it's a style that works so incredibly well with so many people. I think
Yeah.
Perry absolutely is like that as well. Uh, there's a few things in here that I really like at just the start of the match. Like they kick it off very quickly. There's a few like testing moments where you can tell both of them are sort of testing each other and they're smiling constantly, which I'm a huge
Yeah,
fan
yeah.
of that. Which Danielson does in most of his matches. Is the like I'm gonna get slightly more excited over the course of the first
Mhm.
10 minutes and just get this like crazy energy, and I think that absolutely is here. I think the fun thing about Jack Perry is that he's also doing the same thing. Whereas often we see people get
It's
like
yeah,
frustrated
yeah.
or not take it seriously, but he's absolutely sort of going the same direction.
Yeah, it always came across to me as being like that very like snide type of confidence, but unfortunately for Danielson, like you said, Jack Perry is the same exact or at least reacts the same exact kind of way because his character is similar in certain ways like that.
You can also tell
But
he's
yeah,
just
they
like I
definitely
think he's one of the few characters that does manage to piss off the character of Bryan Danielson
oh
because for
for
the first
sure.
like third of this match, Jack Perry after every major sequence just like stands up, puts his arms out, and stops, and then like takes a walk
Yeah,
around the ring,
yeah.
which I love. I think that like showboating is so funny to me. Especially because he's so serious while doing it. I think it
Mhm.
works really well. And then you can see Danielson just getting like slightly more angry every time he does it, as he's leaving the ring and like going around and not engaging with the second half of these exchanges. Um, but yeah, I think works really well.
Yeah. And then of course, we have to talk about the big, massive, giant, evil elephant in the room that you alluded to earlier, which is the ending of this match and the post
Well,
match.
but first, we have the elephants in the room, the EVPs, appearing in the middle of the match after Bryce Rimsberg is knocked
Yes,
out.
yes.
And then running in and doing their goofy little "we're gonna be evil villains and knock everyone out" thing.
Mhm.
Which this is always the thing that when it's done correctly, I loved these like weird referee things. I think AEW is just often very inconsistent with their handling of it.
They do it
Um,
very often,
they
so
do
they
it very
have.
often, and sometimes they have someone else come out, and sometimes they don't, and it's not. There's no consistency, which is my only real complaint with these type of things. And right here, especially, there's like a bit where they're basically the EVPs have beaten up Bryan Danielson real bad. And everyone's like, "Oh, this is the end. Like Jungle Boy's gonna end his career right here." And it doesn't happen. And it's maybe the
Of course
loudest
not.
pop that I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's a bunch more exchanges,
They.
basically like fighting back the insanity that has happened of Danielson like visibly looking very injured the whole time.
Mhm.
But then there's also, I think, the actual finale of this match. Not the stuff that happens afterwards, but the actual finale is maybe one of my
Yeah.
favorite finales to a match. It's certainly my favorite Jack Perry finale, where
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
straight up sits up, puts his arms out, and accepts the final move. Like,
It's yeah.
it is
That
really like
alone,
a supervillain look.
exactly. That alone is just like, yep, he's got the character now. He's just like 100% nailed the character now. Um, which I feel like is also very, very uh his that whole entire act is very New Japan influence. I feel like there's a lot of Healy boys from New Japan that would get away with doing similar things, and obviously since he spent some time there on his forced vacation, yeah, him coming away with that and pulling it off so consistently and just like 100% leaning into it and taking it so seriously, it just makes it memorable in a way that Jungle Boy things previously kind of weren't, in a way, because he was never bad. He was just kind of at worst uninteresting.
Yeah, there
But
usually
now,
wasn't a actual feud or like a lot of stuff behind it because it's kind of hard to seriously have a feud with Jurassic Express.
yeah,
Um, and I think it's very clear that this new change has worked out for Jack Perry very well.
100%.
And yeah, I also think this is one of the best ways that you can lose and still get a huge like boost. I think this is definitely Perry is raised in the estimation of most people.
Hmm.
Then of course we get the actual insanity at the end with
Yes.
Killswitch first of all coming out, followed by the Patriarchy, who is then interrupted by the BCC because of course good old Christian Cage was going to use his contract to fight for the title when Danielson is incredibly weakened. And there was a long time where I thought that was actually going to happen. Uh, I
Yeah.
was I
Yeah. I
was
was ready
ready
because
for it.
they've pulled that crap before and it was appropriately frustrating. So I was ready for it to repeat itself.
I was ready for it to repeat itself, but I honestly feel like it would have gone a different direction. Like I think if they did it this time,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
would have been Christian Cage gets beat up by Bryan Danielson, who's very tired.
It
Um,
was really funny.
because I think that would have been a very fun thing to do, but I do think it is better for him to keep this for later. Because the BCC comes
Yeah.
out and stops him from using the contract by being big scary men in front of Danielson. Um, that said, those big scary men are also scary too, Danielson.
Yes, I know. And they were so mean. They beat the crap out of him. And
Yeah, so the BCC turned.
yes.
They're all going in on each other. Particularly, it's Claudio and Mox are really having it out for Danielson. uh, sticking his head in a plastic bag, which is always a sort of nerve wracking thing to do, but I think it's very clear they
Yeah,
handled it okay here. Uh, and poor Yuta.
dude. Yeah. First of all, I do want to say that it's obviously safely pulled off because Danielson is fine, but like, man, that was a convincing spot with the bag because I don't even like you couldn't see any obvious parts that they were holding it open or anything like that. That
Well,
was like
because
really
I'm
convincing.
almost certain the way they were handling that is Danielson had like his thumb underneath and was pulling it closed whenever the camera was on him. Um, that is certainly what it looked like, where he was like, which you cannot tell. Like it absolutely is not very clear, but he's got his hands around the bottom, and I think that's what he's doing is he's like forcing it closed around his own head when he's doing that, which looks insane. Um,
Yeah, it does.
it does
um,
not look safe, but I think that's how he was controlling it. We also need to mention Marina Shafir uh, coming out as well for this, and I think
yeah, I she is the biggest kind of I almost want to say worry I had for this new Mox thing that's happening, and I guess
yeah,
new BCC thing that's happening because they showed Mox doing things and he's being all mean, he's not explaining himself, and I'm already kind of getting like, okay, dude, you gotta what are you doing? What are you? This isn't you, dude. Come on, come back. You need to think what you're doing. And then it pans over to literally, in my opinion, one of the most boring people that he could have sided with, who's kind of only been part of storyline that I'm like, okay, great, here we go again. But I'm gonna be honest with you, her throwing the random guys in the back was like really like super crazy convincing. Like she really puts
yeah. I mean,
some
that's
oomph
why
behind
I
those.
mentioned her here because I think like Marina
Yeah,
Shafir vanished for like almost a full year off of AEW
I
television after her
I thought
debut.
she left.
Yeah,
I thought
everyone
she
thought she
left the
left.
company.
um, she didn't leave. She's still here, and I think it
Yeah.
seems like they clearly were just having her practice and get better at actual wrestling.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that worked really well because this was convincing, and I think she looks super
Yeah.
intimidating. She's one of the people that has that like Mox look where you can tell they just mean business. Um, yeah, I think that looks great. I think she's fitting in with the rest of the group here. I think especially Yudo like full crying
Yeah, that is kind of what
as
excites me
Pac is
the
like
most.
holding him back.
Yes, Pac is no longer a brand new dad for you to have. He is now a horrible, horrible, evil villain. And dude, the
He's your shitty
matches that
uncle.
they will have, oh my God, the matches that they're going to have against each other are going to be amazing.
Yeah, man.
I'm really excited.
My like pipe dream from this is that Yuda's gonna run the gauntlet of former BCC members.
Yes, and I want it would be kind of cool if almost he was like serving like the Padawan role to to Danielson's like Jedi Master thing because they're both clearly still aligned with each other enough that
Yeah,
the rest of BCC didn't tell Yuta this was going to happen, and then he was reacting like that. Um, but yeah, I still like I'm I think I described this to you as really interesting because I'm certainly interested, and I don't think this is a bad thing at all. But
hmm
it's been like 4 weeks now, and because including like Mox's like schizo rambling, and there has been no explanation at all of what is going on. So if they do not explain this
I mean, hey,
tomorrow, the
we
day
got
after
dynamite
we're
tomorrow.
doing this, I don't.
So,
They literally better. It's to the point where it's like, okay, I'm interested. You got me, but you need to capitalize on that right now. Otherwise, I'm gonna be a little bit like, okay, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Now's
yeah,
the
they
time
can
to
set up a
spill the
long term
beans.
storyline with this, but they can't drag it out. Like they have to start the thing now.
Yeah,
Um,
if they do a thing where they're like, oh, we went to the back to the locker room to discuss with the Blackpool Combat Club what they did at the pay-per-view, and they just like try to like they open the door and everybody just like looks at uh the backstage, whichever of the backstage reporters they use, and they just that's the end of the clip, and they just like don't say anything and push them out. I'm gonna be really like, okay, guys. you betrayed me. I'm here to be interested, and now I'm like, yeah, like you can only dangle the carrot in front of my face for so long before I get bored. I don't know. Do it now. Give me. I want to know.
Yeah, I think especially because AW has had a history of sometimes dangling that carrot too long.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, I think this is super fascinating into this. I am really curious where they're going to take Danielson's title run after
Hmm.
this. Uh, if they're going to pull the Christian Cage thing, if they're going to continue the Danielson's retirement tour angle, because I think this has put them in a really interesting spot. And obviously, like, Tony Khan must have an idea of
Yeah.
what's happening because he booked it. So there
Mhm.
has to be a plan, but I think this is definitely like a weird thing to do because like Danielson looked like he was severely injured during this, right? Like not actually severely injured, but this is the type of thing where you do a injury storyline off of it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
which usually is an excuse for wrestlers to take some vacation. So, which clearly can't be what's happening with Danielson
Because he has the
because
belt.
of
And if
the belt
AEW does
thing.
another vacating belt storyline, I'm going to scream so
No more
loud that
vacating
Tony
belts.
Khan hears it. I'm going to be
Especially if that's how
so
Danielson
mad.
retires.
No, please God, no.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, like the only injury that we like know of that is current for him is like he needs neck surgery.
Yeah.
And that is like not the kind of thing you're just like off for like a month and you come back from. That is like
That's like
no,
a
that's
half
like
year to a year recovery.
yeah, you can't have the belt while that's happening.
So I have to imagine that they're going to end this soon-ish. Like I'm wondering
Yeah,
if
with
maybe they do like
something.
Danielson versus Mox or something, and that's going to be the sort of like end for now.
Hmm.
Which I would be down for, but I do think like they're in a position now where Danielson they did the whole Danielson's retirement match thing. And now they were positioned to do Danielson's retirement tour where he's gonna like defend his championship until he's beaten, and that's gonna be his retirement moment. First of all, I'm not convinced he's actually gonna retire. I think he's gonna go get his surgery done and come back in a year.
It's yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah.
absolutely do not think Danielson has it in him to retire.
No, not fully at least. I think he can maybe wrestle like less, right? But
Totally,
not
like he can
stop
just be the big
completely, I don't
name and
think.
not the person wrestling every week.
Yeah, yeah.
Which absolutely like I don't know. I hope they find a way, and Danielson, if Danielson does still want to wrestle, he ends up in a situation where he can and isn't stuck with like the Cody stipulation of you now can't come back and wrestle.
Oh God, they can't
Uh,
do that, dude. They can't do that.
which is the kind of thing like yeah, it's the whole retirement angle is dangerous to keep running. Like I was down for one match because I knew he was gonna win. Like I did was not one of the people that bought the retirement thing for the first match, but I think continuing to do it is gonna be real weird if he
Yeah,
does come back. And I think especially because of what happened in this match, like it was a great match, but I do think like this ending is really complicated uh, to handle with Danielson potentially getting neck surgery soon.
yeah.
It's like you need to
That's
close something
the
out here.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's kind of nice that it's not surface level predictable,
Totally.
as things sometimes are, which is not really anything wrong with that either, but it's kind of nice how AEW keeps up this kind of like, oh, well, I'm not really it could really
The
legitimately
suspense
go
is
either way.
there.
There's like yeah, there's like good reasons you can put forth for either like win or lose. But at the same time, it's just not enough. It's not enough to go off of yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's the thoughts on the Danielson match until we have further information. Unlike last time, we're
Mhm.
not doing this after a dynamite, so we don't know what's coming up and if they're going to address it.
Yeah,
So I feel like they have to, but we'll see tomorrow. Okay.
I hope so.
So next up is our real main event, which is the secret main
Yes.
event of they have to
Unsanctioned.
unsanctioned lights out. When the lights come back on, AEW is not responsible for what
Yeah.
happens next. And it's also the match that a lot of people have had problems with.
I know, yeah, which is just crazy that they're going to complain to AEW so much when they said they're not responsible, guys. I don't know. Go complain to somebody
Yeah, they're
else
not
because
responsible.
clearly
Complain to
AEW
the
is
event
not interested
venue.
in listening. Yeah, really.
um,
Yeah, this was the absolutely crazy lights out steel cage match between the two people that probably hate each other the most in the sport right now, which is Hangman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland. One of the most enjoyable feuds to watch boil over,
it also
and
two people that are said to be quite lovely people outside of
yes,
wrestling,
yeah,
which is
that like
always really funny.
yes, to plan this, like, you know that during the crazy promo that we called one of the best that we have seen, at least in recent memory, of Hangman burning down Swerve's house, you know that Swerve was behind the camera probably being like, yeah, 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 this is awesome. And then, oh, we should give you like a glass of whiskey to drink while you're on the, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, you know, they were both working together and probably having so much fun, dude, because they clearly, here's the thing. You people are going to complain about the spots being too crazy and stuff. Dude, this is done out of such deep love for the craft that, like, the fact that Swerve would agree to have a syringe stabbed through his cheek is like, that's just crazy. That's just crazy that he would agree to do that and would trust Hangman with doing it. Right?
Yeah, 'cause
That
I
is
think
just
that's
crazy
something
to
a lot
me.
of people miss about specifically AEW when they do these matches. I think it is certainly the case on the indies occasionally when you get a death match where it's like you maybe don't trust both of the people involved. Like I don't
Because you might
necessarily
not
trust that
even
both
know
of
them
them.
very well.
Yeah, they may not know each other and actually know what they're doing. But this is like a super high profile. These are two of the biggest names in AEW. It's very clear that both of them have to have trusted each other for this to be a thing. Because
For
AEW
sure.
is always like reticent to do these types of matches unless that is in place. Um, that said, I think this was a case for me where I think they might have gone like one step over the line. Uh,
Huh.
a few. So the thing that actually got me, and this is not a thing that I've seen a lot of people mention, but that got me a little bit was the start. Um,
Oh, really?
when the cage is lowering.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was pretty
because
crazy.
they do this thing where they are like outside, they're running around the ring before the cage, while the cage is like actively lowering slowly, but it's lowering. And then they do the thing where they're like putting each other's heads underneath the cage as it's getting
Yeah.
pretty close. And like that is a safe enough spot in terms of like neither of them is actually injured. There's very low risk of something going wrong there. But if something did go wrong, that's instant death for
It,
both of them.
it's
Like
yeah, yeah. They literally
that to me is the
decapitated.
like that is approaching the sort of Owen Hart level of like why did we don't need to do this because if there is a misfire or something happens wrong, the cost is way too big. Um, that one like early spot is the thing that actually got me a little bit more than anything else in the match. Because I think for everything else, it's very clear that like wrestling's fake. they have a
Yeah, at the end of the day,
they have
that is the
signals, they have
case.
stuff that they can do to signal that a thing is not okay, right? Everyone knows this is why the refs are there and checking on them. Like there is a level of trust that has to go into this. So clearly they were both okay with what happened afterwards.
Yes, yeah.
um,
Uh,
and I think that
and
goes a long way.
I don't blame you for certainly not for getting like queasy at the thought of the cage stuff happening because obviously awful stuff to that degree has happened in the past and famously
It's up to
so.
the past, and
Uh,
AEW has a history of bad cage side things happening. that's the
yeah, and
that's what kind of got me.
they they haven't had, I mean, knock on wood, right? They haven't had like a catastrophic failure or anything like that, but they do keep tempting fate. That's the thing. But I feel like uh, it's an interesting case because we now live in the time where Tony Khan, I think every time Darby does the like coming down from the ceiling spot,
Yeah.
uh, that famously that is the famous little wrestling spot that was not caught on camera. He asks Martha Hart if it's okay, and she is the one that gave permission to do it. So it's not like it's weird to say like, oh, well, they take more safety measures than they used to. Well, like,
Oh, they
yeah, I
totally
guess
do.
duh, but that
Yeah,
doesn't stop bad things from happening. But
there's a
I
lot more
feel like
safety stuff in
there's
place, but I think it's definitely like the cage to me is just one of those things where I doubt most arenas are made in a way that this is the most easy thing to do.
yeah,
Because
because
I think
I
like it's
certainly don't
almost
know
just
what
out
their
of their
exact
control,
method is at
right?
all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If something were to go wrong, and it's clear that something did go wrong with the cage because like there's a while in the match where it's stuck, and you can see people on the outside like trying to lower it
Yeah, yeah.
because it didn't actually close the final couple of inches. Which yeah, that makes me worried when the spot right before was them putting their heads right there. I do think the rest of this was very entertaining. I think especially like both of them coming out. So we haven't talked about Hangman's new theme yet. Being mentioned, I think Hangman's theme now does a good job of setting the tone for what you're going to expect from these matches.
Mhm.
Because this is very classic, like it is a Hangman theme. And I like that they gave him the change when this is his character, because it makes a
Yes,
lot of
yeah.
sense. I think Swerve pulling out the photos of his family and stapling them to Hangman Page's head is great. I think that's a totally
Yeah,
great spot.
I just somebody becoming immune to being stapled is not really something I ever woke up and expected to see in my life. But now I think Swerve has just the power creep has happened, and Swerve is now immune to staples. And staples only make him laugh more,
I
which
both
is
of them at this
absolutely
point.
crazy. It is so crazy. Because God knows, even just like you don't even have to pull the trigger on the staple gun. You just got to hold that shit up to me, and I am backing out. I am hard backing out. You do
Hard
not need to
no.
do anything, and it's over. Yeah, it. I don't know. That's just a crazy spot to do over and over to the point that somebody has just tasted the poison so often that they've become immune to it. Um, this this also for I mean this cements this being AEW's like brutal pay-per-view of the year that I had mentioned that they tend to do an annual at least brutal pay-per-view where there's just like crazy rough matches the whole way through, and this one is definitely, an argument can be made that they keep one-upping themselves, because I think also it goes beyond just the specifically brutal spots, right? There's they've done this wonderful thing these last few shows where they've done a super good job miking up the actual ring, so you can
Yes.
hear what these these two individuals that hate each other more than anything have to say to each other. And there's just one part where after Swerve has taken so much damage where he's finally down on his knees and just like panting, and Hangman just keeps going, I said I was going to make you beg. I'm going to make you beg. So I want you to beg, and I'm going to punish you. I'm going to punish you. And he just keeps screaming. And there's just
Yeah.
like there's something about like the camera framing is just so perfect, and they're in a cage, and they're both like just even just their skin has been pinkened because there's just so much blood between them, and they're all like covered in like little scratches and staples and like their gears tearing apart and stuff. It's just so like that is just so carnally wrestling that the fact that there are like the boomers, the WWE onlyers that are like complaining about this match. I feel like this was your match. I don't know. They did a huge crazy like spot or a promo that you'd expect to see in like the Attitude Era or something where they burn somebody's house down. and they're doing a crazy cage match. Like this should be exactly what you were looking for. This is so
I mean, this
just
is
like
Hell in a Cell,
primordially,
right?
yeah. This is Hell in a Cell, but just without the name. It is exactly what you want to see. It is purely unsanitized, just primal slang for for the freaks that Tony Khan has made it clear that's what he books for, and I think this is so successfully that yes, there's some pretty crazy spots that could have gone wrong and managed to not go wrong. Um, with varying degrees of dangerousness and some that were just like I personally cannot handle needles at all.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot that made me
even though I
squeamish, but that I know are fine. I think
yeah
there were only two spots that actually made me nervous, which was that first one and then the chair shot. I think
the chair
absolutely.
yeah
I think people are justified in being a little whacked out. I think at Swerve throwing a Hangman head first into a chair. Uh,
Yeah, which is it is worth pointing out that AEW made it like publicly clear because it wasn't this way for a while, and then they started doing these like the classic unprotected chair shots to the head
yeah,
and like buckle bombs and doing like the seizure cell and all of like that whole mini list of things is like now they're all things that you can't do unless both people in the ring or everybody involved in the ring signs a thing that says they're all okay with it. So clearly, obviously, they all were. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. AEW is a business that, like, if they don't do that, I that's like a real life like fines and getting fired and stuff. Uh, so like it's people there. I feel like there's because I don't want to come across like I don't care or want to actively insult the people that are just like getting squeamish and like worried about that stuff. But there is a level of not liking it where it's just like you want this to be so sanitized that it's not even fun anymore. And I feel like those people, which are like the most like vocal and annoying, and I feel like the reason that these complaints get spread around so virally after every time they do a brutal match between these two specifically. Um, I feel like they ignore or just like forget, or maybe just didn't know because I feel like half the people that complain about AEW don't even watch it. Just don't even know that AEW has that thing that at the very least
yeah,
you know for a fact that every single person involved has uh been required to like legally consign their agreement to do that, which I feel like it doesn't absolve all like well, if something terrible happened, then yeah, that's something shitty happened. Like, duh, that doesn't make it any better. That really sucks. But since nothing did, and they presumably took every safety possible to prevent that sort of thing from happening, everybody in there was okay with it. So you can't really blame it on like Tony Khan for allowing it, or Swerve for horribly doing this to Hangman, or Hangman for horribly doing this to Swerve, because everybody was in agreement. And I feel like there's groups of people that forget about that and are complaining to the
yeah,
point where it's not reasonable anymore, and are just being party poopers.
yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that. I do think like the one thing for me is they keep doing the chair shot, and it has gone bad for them before. I would not be surprised if it goes bad for them again.
Hmm.
Especially in, I think the manner in which it was done here is one of those things where it's like this was a literally being thrown, right? Like not you're being bombed into it or something, being thrown at it. Where there's a degree of like uncontrollability about what's going on when that
Yeah.
happens. And that's the part that concerns me a little bit. And that could totally be like more of a Hangman wanted to do it thing than
Hmm.
anyone else. But I do think certainly like it's a great looking spot. It looks excellent. It makes the match better. I don't know that that's a thing that I want to see them keep doing, especially when it's
Yeah.
a thing where
Yeah.
like if you every time you try that you're testing it, right? Specifically on
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
concussion and head related things. You're really pushing an edge there
Yeah,
whenever
and
you try that stuff.
I want to be clear also that for that I totally agree with you. I'm not asking for or suggesting that they do it all the time and
Yeah, yeah,
just
totally.
like
No, I think we're
give.
totally on the same page of like this is clearly something they were both uh, wanting to do. I think it
Just
is
can't
just
ever
a
use it.
yeah. I think it's just a case of like this needs to be a super rare thing. It needs to be considered very carefully. Um,
Yeah.
and I am reticent that they might start doing it more. Uh,
Yeah, which
like that.
for multiple reasons, I hope they don't because obviously for the safety stuff, but even just from like let's just take it just from like a match quality thing. It's like once you do something all the time, it becomes a little bit less like there's a little bit less of that wow factor to it. It's not really as impressive anymore. So that it would even lose like just that baseline wrestling enjoyment if they did it like
I mean, it would become
too
Hell in a
often,
Cell,
right?
where Hell in a Cell is no
It
longer
would be
Hell in a Cell.
yeah, it's not even just a sell, I guess.
It's
It's
just the
kind of what
name of the
Hell in
pay
a
per
Cell's
view.
become. Yeah,
I
you're right. You're
think
right.
that's it's exactly the example of what happens when these things get too far. Um, that's a rest of this match phenomenal. I do think this was
Oh
handled
yeah.
just like super well. Um, I think the cinder block stuff that's I think the thing that made me squeamish that I wasn't really worried about. Like
Very fair.
I don't think the risk of anyone getting injured from that was very high, but it was certainly one of the things where like I don't know. I feel like everyone's skinned their knee at some point and knows what that feels like.
Oh yeah, that's because it's like relatable enough where you know, like everybody who's ridden a bike before knows what that feels like because it's just like, oh, that sucks so much, dude. And like
Because
now
it's
you
like
got
it's not
like
even
if you
that
skin
bad,
your
but it
knee.
stings forever.
Yes, dude, and like even just like wearing like jeans on your legs if you skin your knee for the next like the rest of that week like just sucks because it's sticking to it, it's sticking to the raspberry, and it just sucks. And you know now they have to deal with whatever part of their body got slammed into the cinder block for the rest of the next little bit. And it's also what is crazy to me too is that this is like AEW's done the cinder block thing before, and like it appears to be like a cinema cinder block. Like it's like a made to break cinder block. It's only broken once. So I don't know what like crazy ass like mixture they're using, but it's like insane. I don't like I feel like because I remember one time Keith Lee got slammed with one over the back and it just like shattered completely and like it obviously was fake, but it looked awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I
But
think what
like
happened here is it looks like when Hangman was dropped onto it, he hit it on like the corner. He didn't actually land in the center.
yeah.
But he hit on the edge, and so it was totally fine. I have a feeling it was intended to break. It just didn't.
Maybe, yeah. But they rolled with
Um,
it, and honestly, they're fine with that as well.
yeah, I think it worked totally. Uh, but yeah, I overall I think this is a really good match, and I think my like the whole using a piece of the burning house bit
Oh yeah.
very funky to me. It doesn't look that intimidating as a weapon.
That's okay.
This is actually the
That is
least scary
fair.
part of the match.
Well, yeah, especially when you surround it with all the other stuff too, right? It's
Yeah,
not
like
like
I
the
honestly think
scariest thing ever.
what should have happened is instead of it being used as a weapon, Hangman should have brought it out and like snapped it in half and thrown it at him or something.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Just like go
Or
for the narrative of it and not attempting to use a like charred rounded wood piece.
and maybe they just didn't want to do this because for my understanding, this is more of a GCW thing, which is Joey Janela's wrestling promotion that is very fun to watch, and they do crazy matches to like this level and beyond all the time to a very harrowing level because I don't know if they have any safety procedures. But anyway, they do this thing where I don't know if it's because of cost or whatever, and instead of tables, they use wooden doors. And I feel like, dude, if Hangman took the front door,
Oh yeah, that would have been
Swerve's head,
great.
and he used that in place of a table, like
That would have been
So
so
working
good.
that in somehow would have been so like, oh, that's that would have gotten everything what they were trying to do
Dude,
with the
replace
piece of story for
replace the
Downhouse
steak with
and
that.
more.
That's so good.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. Because then, like, and whoever gets sent through that, there's like symbolism that can go both ways. Splinters go everywhere. It's yeah, come
Yeah,
on.
you can still
That
have
it
the
was
image
right
of
there.
like
It was right there.
Swerve grabbing a splinter and holding it. You could still totally do that with that. Yeah. No,
Totally,
I
totally.
think that absolutely would have been a way to go with it. Yeah, I do think the spot that didn't get me, and I know you're gonna disagree with this, is the needle. The needle wasn't
That's
particularly scary to me.
Yeah, that that preyed upon people like me who are very, very anxious around around needles. Like, because I'm to the point where like I don't even like getting shots myself. Like, obviously, I will do it when I have to. I did it during COVID and stuff, but I
Yeah.
literally looked at like the lady that was giving it, and I was like, "Listen, I'm gonna like react, like I'm gonna like overreact for this because I really hate needles, so I need you to just bear with me." And she was like, "It's okay, it's fine. You're not the first one." So I know there are others like me,
Oh, tons of
obviously.
people.
Otherwise, AW wouldn't have done this spot. But it really like it was so like I can't believe they done it, and the match is better off for it. But I did have my hand covering the screen because I could not look at it. I did not want to.
Yeah, I don't know. It looked fine to me. I do think it's a good spot. I feel weird that this was the final spot. Like, this was one of the last ones where I almost think they should have flipped the order of
Yeah.
this in the like house piece and whatnot. Um,
Mm.
but I don't know, didn't land as hard for me. I do think because I think what happened is when he took that out, where my head went was not I want to use it as a weapon, but like what's in that? Because the commentary was
It's
going
what he
like,
just injected
I legitimately I think that would have been a good angle. Of like
That is crazy.
of,
That is
of
crazy and
Hangman
kind of
coming out
awesome.
and drugging Swerve, and I think that would have been a great way to end the match, where he's like screaming, "I want you to beg," and Swerve is just passing out.
It's
Uh,
yeah, oh my
I
god,
think
dude,
that
that would have
totally
been
would have worked as well.
that would have been crazy.
And yeah, they could have done it the same way, like. But I was the whole time
Mhm.
that was out, I was like, why would he have a hypodermic needle? Why would they specify that it's a hypodermic needle? Like the whole time, I was just going through my head, like, is there something in there? Is it
For
like,
fun. Doing it for
um,
fun, of course.
yeah, but I do love the finish of this match, like the actual end of
Yeah.
a Hangman like climbing the cage and raising his arms and stuff like that, and the bit of like him walking back down after a knockout victory, specifically, which I think is what really makes this land, is it did take someone
Yeah.
getting knocked out for the match to finish.
Yeah, and
Is good.
he like stumbled back to the ring like he was getting ready to run back in for a second and then like stopped himself and kept going back. Like he's just embraced the insanity so
Well, because I
much.
think what
It's
they
really
did a great
good.
job of here is like Hangman used to be a character whose stories were entirely about like self doubt and a little bit more goofy. Like he didn't tend to be involved in things that got super serious.
Yeah, for the
Outside of like
most part.
the occasional really hard hitting Kenny Omega feud, but even then, that's mostly about like friendship and self worth and whatnot. And what we're
Mhm.
looking at here is like him becoming insane. Like, I
It's
think
yeah, he's
this
given
is
up
proper
almost.
Western vengeance,
Yeah.
and I hope he runs with this for a while because I do think there is like to me the way that I read the final moments of this is him looking back and like fully abandoning the part of himself that wanted to go back and help and
Yeah.
like check that he was okay and was like, no, I'm gonna take my belt and I'm gonna go.
Yeah,
Not
this
belt,
is
you know,
the I can't go
take my
back no
jacket and
matter
go.
what moment. Yeah.
Yeah, this is his Darth Vader moment.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I legitimately hope, like, I think the biggest thing here that AW can do is to not fumble that. Because
Yes, I
this is
agree.
something we talked about before, where AW often has a problem landing the finale of a thing or like the continuance after the finale. Um,
Mhm.
and I think for Hangman, where this has put him is as the Hangman, right? Like I would almost
Yes.
love it if they dropped Adam Page uh,
And
from
just
his
called
title
him the
card and
Hangman.
called him the
Yeah,
Hangman.
that would be cool.
Because this to me was like the sort of Undertaker moment where he came out, was so convincing, and then walked away, and then now you can have him as the insane like finisher of things.
Yeah, totally.
Especially because he kind of wrestles a schedule like that already, where Adam Page is not wrestling every week. I think that would make sense, and I hope they don't immediately have him lose to someone on the next episode of Dynamite. Like,
Yeah,
I think you've got to
yeah.
protect Adam Page after that for a while.
And I feel like without a doubt, Swerve's going on vacation for a little bit. He's earned it.
Yeah, yeah,
He had like probably the most the brightest burning and one of the shorter lasting championships that we've had so far. But it was so brightly burning that he can take.
yeah. He gets his time. Uh, I think they're totally in a really good spot now, and I'm hoping they just
Yeah,
have.
you don't make up after this.
Yeah,
you still keep fighting. So
yeah. I hope they run with this ending and they get some good stuff going. Um, and I want to see Hangman Adam Page become Lance Archer for a little while.
yeah, that's okay with me. That is okay with me.
All right. Well, that's the AW All Out discussion overall. Brett, what's your thoughts on the show as a whole?
This, I think, was consistently and entire like as a whole package was a better pay-per-view than the last one because I don't think there wasn't a match that was really like okay, this should have been on the pre-show straight up, or this person in this match sucks. Even like every single wrestler on this card is at the very least very talented, and at the very most, uh, bordering on the next level of human evolution to a fearful degree. But we did not have any Chris Jericho matches. We did not have any Britt Baker matches. In fact, neither of them were mentioned on the card. And I don't know how direct one to one the correlation is, but it was a really good pay per view. The worst part about it is that it happened so soon after All In that I feel like my energy bar my batteries haven't had not been fully recharged
Yeah, like
after
this
All
at
In.
least needed 3 weeks, I think, between the two.
Yeah, yeah, a solid month.
Yeah, because I do think this is just a lot. It was a lot in a really short amount of time, and it was a huge tone shift from
Yeah,
All In. Like
seriously.
a big tonal whiplash in a good way, but I think this is in a way that would have landed better if they gave it just like another week or two to breathe. Um, and I know the reason they didn't is because they're doing the whole like we're running monthly pay per views or near monthly pay per views at this point. Uh, which yeah, we've kept talking about. Like they need the deal. They need the streaming deal
Yeah, they
for
need the
this to
deal,
work.
and now I'm gonna revise that too. They need the deal, and they need to like make sure they're like actually a month apart. Because
Yeah,
I felt really bad for because I my parents, as I mentioned before, are big AW fans. They didn't bother watching this because it's the full 60 ass dollars, and it's like less than 2 weeks since the last one.
yeah.
Um, and they have lives, so I really, I don't. Can you blame them? I don't know. I really can't. And I kind of felt bad because they were just like, "Oh, just tell us about it after the fact." And it's like, "Damn, I guess I will," but I can't really be upset for you not wanting to watch it because it costs so much money for, and like I'm not gonna go and like, oh, hey, Dad, here the laptop that can barely run Google Chrome. You're gonna use it. I'm gonna show you how to HDMI it to the TV, and we're gonna get you that pay per
Yeah,
view. Like,
yeah.
come on, that no, that they're past their
Well, it's like
prime when it
this is a
comes to
thing
that.
that video games industry talks about all the time, but like piracy is generally a service problem and not a financial problem.
Yes,
Like I mean, most
yes, the
people
Gabe Newell quote
don't do it because
is
things cost
always
money. They
true.
do it because it's so much more convenient. And
Yeah, seriously.
I think for AW especially, that's a real case of like everyone I know that does legitimately pay for AEW does it through Triller and VPNing, where it's like a way of giving them money, but in a way that isn't asking you for $60 every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the biggest barrier they have right now, because they really need to find that streaming deal. And rumors are that it's happened and is gonna be in the next couple of days. But like that rumor's been happening repeatedly
Please.
for years at this point.
Yeah. It keeps resetting. It's so annoying.
It keeps resetting, and I don't know. I'm hitting the limit, right? I'm hitting the moment where I'm like, I cannot continue to buy pay-per-views weeks apart that are not
No, no.
crazy. And like neither All In and All Out were both great shows. Like I think we had nothing but positive things to say about both of them for the most part.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it's like the case of like even WWE, which does do the weekly, if not slightly more than, or not weekly, but monthly, if not slightly more than monthly, big events. They do it because they have Peacock, and it's on a thing that
Yeah.
you can watch it with the subscription, um, which yeah is like very convenient and easy to use. So that's my next like thing for AW. I just want to see that be better handled. But overall, I think all that was a really great time. There's one spot that I forgot to mention that I don't know if you caught this, Brett, but I think it was Jack Perry and Danielson during the match. There's a moment where like you can tell the 3 count got a little wacky, and I think the ref like pushed them up. I'll find what
He's
I was
just doing
referring
his
to. It's
job.
like, there's like one moment where it looked really weird, and went back and like checked it again while we were talking, and I think it is legitimately that Jack Perry just didn't kick out
Really?
in time.
That is
Um,
crazy.
but I'm not sure it was meant to be something else, because it was kind of like it was a weird positioning too, so I'm not sure if it was that or not. But yeah,
Mhm.
overall great show. So we'll see y'all next time that there's an AEW show to talk about. As always, shows happen when AEW happens.
Which will
That's it.
hopefully be a little bit this time,
Which
so
hopefully
we
will,
have
will
time
not
to
be
sit on this
until
one.
October.
Yeah, please God. Thank you, Chris Jericho, for not being on this card.